25 years ago, I stumbled into the Shepherd Building in Providence, Rhode Island. It was the home of the Rhode Island Department of Education, where Peter McWalter was in his 7th year as commissioner. Peter had allowed a couple of education innovators, Dennis Littky and his co-founder, Elliot Washer, to set up shop on his first floor with a new school called Big Picture Learning. And it completely blew my mind. It was so far outside the bounds of what I thought school was that I think I declared it then and there the coolest school I'd ever seen. It remains a super important innovation, and in some respects is back in vogue. This is the Getting Smart podcast, and I'm Tom Vander Ark, and today we're talking to Dennis Littky, the co-founder of Big Picture Learning and also a college president. Doc, it's good to see you. I put on a suit because I knew I was talking to a college president. So
yeah, no, I'm glad you got dressed up. And I'm stepping away from education, moving to Costa Rica Tuesday for at least 6 months. So I got my Costa Rican shirt on. So I considered this dressing up for you, Tom.
You were already famous by the time I met you because you were a bit of a rabble-rouser principal in New Hampshire, but you didn't wear that kind of stuff in New Hampshire when you were a principal, did you?
I wore flannel shirts.
That makes sense for New Hampshire.
Yeah.
When did you catch the color vibe? Because I think when we met in '99, you were on the color train.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. So I have 110 sneakers, all different colors. And I actually had a girlfriend like 10 years ago who said my shoes were pretty boring.
What do you have on today? What color?
I got my LeBrons. I'll show you. There's one.
Wow.
But here's the cool part is that both different. And that's how they come, man.
Do you remember that day that I met you in '99? I think Tony Wagner brought me there. He said, "Oh, there's this guy you got to meet called Doc Littky," and you had caught his attention because of your leadership at Thayer.
Yeah.
I should mention to people that I think Thayer were you the first school in the coalition of essential schools?
Yes, us and Debbie Meyer, Central Park East. So we were the first two with Ted Sizer and back in, I don't remember when, and at one time I got in all kinds of trouble at Thayer. They try to fire me everywhere. And a board member stood up and said, Brown University is a communist organization, so I vote to take Thayer out of the coalition of essential schools. Now, it didn't change anything. I kept doing it, but that was the kind of attitude there.
So did you and Debbie help Ted build those 10 principles?
Yeah, we were the beginning. Ted had the ideas. He wrote Horace's Compromise and such, but Debbie and I were the place that was they were doing the work. So we had something to show.
I think of that as the origin of what some people now would call deeper learning. Ted's focus on inviting young people into experiences that help them use their mind.
Exactly. And you know the sad part, which is interesting for me? When I was giving talks lately, I always ask who knows Ted Sizer, who, for people watching this, he was the high school guru in the 90s. At 35 years old, he was the dean of Harvard Ed School. He was head of Phillips Andover, or one of those schools, and no one knows his name. But you're exactly right. That set the stage for deeper learning, personalized learning, and we took the next level of that. So, that Big Picture.
I remember that same fall that I visited you, I visited Ted at Francis, what was it called?
Francis Parker.
Francis Parker in Boston, and it was awe-inspiring. I just had never, I had weeks before been a public school superintendent, right? And so I had never seen young people so engaged and agentic, so owning their own learning, and a group of teachers so committed to creating that kind of environment. All right, let's go back to the Shepherd Building. So stumble into this place, and then I find out that students are out, what did you call it? Leaving to learn.
Yeah.
They were out in internships 2 days a week. It was the most radical structure I'd ever seen. Where did that idea come from, and how did you create that entry point in Peter McWalter's office?
Yeah. And one is sometime I'll talk later. I had a school before that became pretty well known, Shoreham Wading River Middle School.
Was that before Thayer?
Yeah, 1972 to 78, I got to start a school from scratch out on Long Island. So that's where I got to really play with internships, advisory, et cetera. But when Elliot and I came to Brown University, where Ted was running things at the Annenberg Institute, and Peter McWalter said, hey, there's a school on the books. Would you guys, it's got a bond issue. Would you guys design it and run it? And I had said to Peter at that time, only if we can do exactly what we want. And actually he said yes. So I had no choice. Ellie and I had no choice. And he was probably the only commissioner in the country that would have nodded on that. Ellie and I really said, if we didn't know there was such a thing as school, what would it be like? How do you have this opportunity? I was an experienced principal. I had been a principal in 2 other schools. And one of the things that hit me when they did this giant survey of high school students and asked them, give me one word to describe high school, the word was boring.
Yeah.
And what got worse is 10 years later, when I saw an interview like that, a survey, it was boring and anxious. So it even got worse with people not knowing what they're doing. So we really said, how do you engage students? That's really what it's about, so that it's not boring, so that they come to school and they go deep into their learning. I'm a psychologist by training, and we know learning theory and we know motivation. You have to love what you're doing or have a purpose in some way. And so we said, we can start from scratch. How do we just get a group of students around with one teacher we called advisor? And how do we help the kids find their interest and passion? And they've never been asked that. So you ask you, what are you interested in? I don't know. No one's ever asked me. And so we had processes that we went through, and they go interview with people until they find something. And it wasn't, here's the difference. It wasn't to get them to be a car mechanic or a lawyer. It was to engage them at the time in something they loved. And I didn't really care if they became that. Some of the kids stayed on for 4 years in an internship. Some changed every year, and they would say, you helped me save a lot of time and money. I now understand. I'll tell a little story, and then you can stop me. There was a girl who said, I always wanted to be a teacher. Great, man. Put her back in her middle school. She was a teacher assistant. Then 3 months later, she comes, says, you know what? I hate kids. And so thank God she found out when she was 14, not 22. And then she said, oh, I want to do computers. And then we put her in an internship, and it came back and said, that's pretty boring. But her head was just to think about jobs her parents would like. And she was really a dancer. And then we got her to work with a dancer, and that became her life. And we have a lot of kids that have followed their passion with us in high school and have continued either as a hobby or that's their job. So it's great.
Let's reflect on the core insights that led to that model. So internships and experiential learning seem high on the list. And
Yeah.
I think you described it as one student at a time.
Yeah.
And I still see that on the website. That's the big idea, not
Yes.
running a school, but it's the kid in front of you, one student at a time.
Yeah. So the biggest difference between us and a lot of other good schools that are, that are personalized and take care of their kids and let them out, every kid's got their own curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really one student time. What are you interested in? And we have behind that, you got to read, you got to write, you got to do some math. Math was the hardest because the standardized test math that's not important in our world, according to me. So they weren't using it in their internships. So it's really, a kid could be learning science by working with a doctor. A kid could be working with sailboats and learning science. Every kid in that group had a different curriculum. And then the other thing that we started doing 30 years ago was exhibitions. So a kid couldn't bullshit their way out of it.
Right.
It's their parents were there, their mentor was there. They couldn't say they were doing homework all night when the parents said, no, you weren't. Those were some of the things. One student at a time, show your stuff, which is the deeper learning. Is that sound? Someone's ringing a doorbell here. Do I have to get up and get it? Or Mason, does that bother you? Or you hear a bell? It stops. No, that's okay. So it's really one student at a time. We talked about rigor, relevance, and relationship.
I actually borrowed that theme from you, and
Yep.
it guided the first decade of work at the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
You get full credit for it.
Thank you. And the question about the words is Elliot defines rigor as vigor.
Yeah.
It's not the traditional. We had a guy worked for one of these big newspapers that was doing an article on the Met a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And he said, your kids weren't stressed out. I thought you had to be stressed out to have rigorous learning. And it made me so sad to what people think. You got to be up all night memorizing this, trying to figure out what the teacher's doing, as opposed to a kid in a board meeting. I used to bring kids to all the board meetings, and somebody asked something, and the kid said, oh my gosh, I was up to 2:00 last night doing some stuff, and no one assigned it because it was important to him. So that's what rigor is. And it just changes everything. We're not, I don't know if you use this term, I made it clear that we're not playing school anymore. It's got to be real. And if a kid couldn't deal back in the school, put him out for 4 days where he does great. I also remember it was our first year, and the reporter came in and saw this kid in the hospital. She went to the internship, walking around with his green outfit and being very serious. She was so impressed. Next day she came to school, and the same kid almost ran her over. I said, that's the same kid. You put them in a real environment, they got to act right.
So today, Big Picture Learning has school affiliates all over the country, all over the world, actually. You probably have more affiliates outside of the U.S. than
Yeah, we do.
inside the U.S.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting, because it just started taking off. People in the Netherlands started bringing 20 people to be trained every year here, and then went back. And then Australia took over, and then got a couple schools in Mumbai. And so it's cool. That just,
Australia has more recently contributed a transcript. That's
Yeah.
an important innovation that you're beginning to, Big Picture is bringing back to the U.S.
yeah. And that's the exciting part, is that you hoped it wasn't all caught in Big Picture here, but the schools
Yeah.
can start talking to each other, bringing stuff to us.
But look, I want to acknowledge, Doc, that while the network is an important contribution, it does feel like the whole world has finally learned the lesson that you're trying to teach 25 years ago, that learning has to matter to the student, that it has to be experiential, that internships can be the richest, most powerful set of experiences. And it feels like systems around the world are coming to grips with those lessons and taking them really seriously. We're seeing real movement today around internships and what people are calling client-connected projects, to doing projects connected to the community. That's got to be gratifying. That it took a while, but that the lessons you were trying to teach, I feel like they're finally catching hold.
Yeah, that's where I'm lucky I'm old, man. I could see the stuff actually happening. And Elliot and I said 30 years ago, when the technology gets good, then you can really do. I mean, every kid can build their stuff and can have mentors online all over the world. And the same thing with AI. I think we're set up for that.
Yeah.
Because everyone's not trying to teach the same thing to 30 kids. But you say that, which is true. But on the other hand, schools are as bad or worse than they were 30 years ago. It's so sad. And that's all. I don't know. That's the question. I don't know what can be that tipping point. And what's going to happen? We start talking an hour before this. What does it mean in these next 4 years now? Are they for the college? Are they going to stop Pell? No ed department? What does that mean? Does that mean we got to start building up locally better? I don't know, but we got to start thinking about that to not
It
fall back.
does feel like a formative time in a whole bunch of ways. We're not going to see federal/national leadership, but
Right.
it does feel like there's a big opening for big picture principles. And as you said, the tech is finally catching up with the learning model. And
Yep.
I'm super excited about AI and all the applications that we've talked about in support and guidance,
Yep.
in co-authoring meaningful projects. And even there's some very cool startups doing immersive environments, simulation-based learning, so that you can do a lot of internships, some of them live and in person, but you can also jump
Simulations. Yeah.
into a simulation. And Mason, our producer, was subjected to one live in a town hall recently where he became a hospice nurse. And so that would be a tough environment to step into as an intern, but you can simulate it and have a rich, powerful experience relating to people in different stages of life. So anyway, it feels like the tech has finally caught up with your learning model.
And we were trying to connect the two. A kid who was working at a vet was also getting a vet assistant certificate by doing the simulations of a program. So hold on. Sorry. Jesus. I'm in a school, man. That's what happens.
What do you think of school is? There's kids there.
We go. That's the good news. When I'm going, hey, what are you doing? It's a kid trying to get in to learn in the back door.
All right. So you're famous and you've launched like 3 world-changing schools and networks. Why in the world 15 years ago did you decide to reinvent college?
That's what everyone asked me. But partly, and everyone, my board, a big picture, most of them, except for Ron Welk, who was started Ed Week, really supported me at the time. It came to 2 things. I think a little frustration that we built up big picture. We were doing a good job, had a great staff. I was looking, people were still saying, what's advisory? What's an internship? And it wasn't that our kids weren't doing well in school. It wasn't intended. A lot of people thought that. Our kids, 50% of everyone who starts college drops out,
Right.
which people don't know. But then I saw the data. If you're poor, regardless of what color, and you start college, that's not counting all the kids dropped out of high school, 89% drop out. And I said, that ain't the kid's fault. That's the college fault. So I really thought I could create something. There are 40 million adults who've left school. And a lot of colleges try to get them back, but they put them in the same environment they dropped out of. So yes, it's 15 years later, but it's even less relevant to a 35-year-old. So I'm good at starting stuff and getting going. And it just seemed to be an area that no one's talking about.
Yeah.
And we set out, everyone said, there's no way you'll get accredited. You have to get approved by your state first. The state had turned down schools for 26 years. And it was Brown University tried to sue us.
Wow.
What the hell? We weren't talking about the same people. And so we won the state and then we won national. So we have accreditation like every other school. And our population, 80%, like 500 students, 80% are women of color who are smart as hell. But life got in the way when they were 18 and 19. Most hadn't been to school in 20 years. And here's the cool part. One, we give them life credit. So we have a tough process that they have to go through. It's not, oh, you worked here. They're going to write up portfolios. It's the same thing. It's got the depth to get credit. So my job is to get them out. But 44% end up going on to their masters.
Wow.
Not that I care about a master's, but what I care about is they didn't think they were able to get a BA, and now they feel good about themselves that they go on and get a master's. So that's what made me very proud. You're giving people who were not treated well because they had low-level jobs, and right away, the day they graduate, they went up $14,400 in salary. So that was just an exciting venture, and it seemed like an area that nobody was playing with. The colleges are worse than high schools, by the way.
Called College Unbound.
Yep.
You can find it at collegeunbound.edu.
Yep.
So what are the core design principles that are different?
The good news, it was incubated by Big Picture. So I talked to Big Picture. Let's take those ideas one student at a time. And it's not internships because they're all working adults. So it reverses it. But we have a cohort, which is the same as advisory. So
Usually
everyone has one.
How big is that? Like
They're
10,
between
12,
10 and
15?
15. Yeah.
Okay.
Cohorts aren't necessarily the PhDs that do some of the regular courses, but we take from all the universities here. Half our staff's from Brown, Providence College, who want to do work with this population. And then each student has to come up with a project. And then the courses, so they do that. They meet for 3 hours every week in the evening. So what happens is they get done with work at 5. They come in to the Met school where the Met kids leave. No one uses high schools at night. And then we have people that come in. We have daycare and food because those are two of the problems. So they drop their kids off with us here. We have a certified daycare. We break bread together, and then they go to their group. And then, like parents who have jobs and parents can only really be out one night a week. And that's why when they go to many community colleges, they take so long. So they can go full time while they're working full time, which is one of the beautiful things. So the average they get out in 2 years. And their courses online aren't random. But if they take a sociology course, that professor knows that each adult's going to deal with it differently according to their project. So how do you look at that through the lens of a sociologist? And then we have a couple cool courses you'd like. One is reframing failure, because they all feel they failed in some way.
Right.
So it's how to look at that, and we have and turn it around to being a great story that they feel proud of. We're in the prison, both inside and outside. We gave the first bachelor degrees 2 years ago in our prison here in Rhode Island. There's one prison. And then when they get out, they go right into our program too, which is also a lot of places have stuff in prison, then they forget about people when they get out. And that's when they're hurting. It's the same thing, one student at a time. It's project-based. There are exhibitions that are open to the world, and it's support for the real work they're doing.
And you've expanded from Providence to Philadelphia. You have a site here in Seattle.
Yep. I stepped down as president a year and a half ago, and my job was start to spread. So we started in Seattle area. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. We got a big group in Philadelphia, and we're in Chicago. So we're just looking at how to have the influence. We're never going to hit 40 million. Big picture schools, even though we have 220, are never going to hit everyone. But as you said at the start, if people can see this is a way to do it differently. In both situations, we didn't lose anybody during the pandemic because they had a group. And if somebody started not showing up, somebody in the group would get that person. So both when cities were losing 25% of their students, and at the Met, I told people, you do whatever you need to do during this time. And so they stayed on because there wasn't 5 boring classes. So it's been very cool. And next time when I get old, I'm going to do nursing homes.
You'll have one up and running when I'm ready.
I know, man.
We need better elder care.
Oh, absolutely. And assisted living places, I just read, is the #1 future business, guaranteed. Because even you're getting old, man.
The College Unbound, is most of that instruction, is it face-to-face or is it a combination? Is there some online?
It's a combination. So it's that 3 hour once a week that they come together. And sometimes they come together at their business. At the hospital, it was easy. We put the lab faculty there. We bring in sandwiches and we do it. Our job is to make it easy. And then they have every semester, they have 2 courses. So they can get 24 to 30 credits a year So that's why they can get
That's
out in 2
awesome.
years.
And it's pretty affordable, right?
It's $10,000 a year. And I don't know, for the latest thing I started, it was like so obvious, TA to BA. So we took all these teacher assistants who were making $27,000 and were the moms from the community, brought them in the program, helped them get a BA and certification. The day they stepped out in Providence, they got 54,000. Same in Philly. The union and the Philly school district said we got to train our own. So we got a big group there.
That's great.
And the retention rate is like over 95%.
Do some of the students access Pell Grants for tuition?
They all do. We couldn't exist if they didn't do Pell Grants. So
Yeah.
we can get up to 70, I think $7,800 now, Pell. So there's not too much left. And what we're trying to do now is get businesses and school districts to pay what's left after Pell. So people are going to college, getting a degree that makes sense to them for no cost.
And who's leading College Unbound these days?
So Adam Bush, who worked with me from the beginning as the provost, now took over and is leading College Unbound.
That's beautiful. And I think you and Elliot also did a great job of cultivating leaders from within a big picture. We're big friends of Carlos
and Andrew. Yeah.
Drew.
And the same thing at the Met. This was a young woman from South Providence who saw me speak once, volunteered, then became a teacher, then became a principal, and she's been running the place. It's exciting because that's my job, is to get stuff to be carried on while I'm in Costa Rica.
I hear you're going to Costa Rica next. You're leaving
Tuesday, in 2 days.
I'm coming after you a couple weeks later. Hope we can go visit a school or two together.
That's great. That's great. And I hear there's an interesting school outside my town. I will research it a little in November and December. You're coming into November, right?
I found a micro school right across from our Airbnb. And so
cool.
My family, this is a family impact org, and so they know that we'll be visiting schools on our vacation.
That's great.
It's what a treat to catch up. Thank you for 55 years of pushing against the system. I know you said it doesn't feel like things have changed, but in a lot of ways, it feels like we have this big opening and there's a lot of momentum around all the initiatives and ideas that you've advocated over the years. And you've just influenced thousands and thousands of educators, and that's made school better for millions of kids. So a lot of us appreciate you a lot, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's all been fun. So people say, you're retiring, going on another venture, you deserved it. That's true, but it's not. I've just enjoyed every minute. It just seemed time to play in another arena. Maybe I'll start a school in Costa Rica. Watch out.
It could happen. I want also to point out your contribution to fashion and education. I think the sector's catching up. And I see a lot more school administrators in snakes these days.
Beautiful. Yeah. No.
You're shaping the future, Doc.
We hope. I only got 20 more years till I'm 100, man.
And then let's start some nursing homes together. I'm headed that way.
All right. Very good. So this has been great, Tom. Let me just say, you put us on the map in some way in your early days at Gates. The fact that you gave us bucks and supported us at the beginning of Gates doing education really kind of anointed us, that I talk about a lot. And so people said, if Gates gave them money, they must have done their homework. They didn't know that Tom just walked in a day and fell in love because he knew stuff. And so that was important for us to grow. And that really, we didn't have plans about growing nationally in my head. We were just really thinking of expanding in Rhode Island, but that got us going. So thank you, my man.
Thank you to Dr. Dennis Littky, founder of Big Picture Learning and College Unbound. It's been a treat.
All right, my man.
Thanks to our producer, Mason Pasha. And until next week, keep learning, keep leading, and keep leading with one student at a time.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.